Hey everyone, welcome. I have the great pleasure and honor to have Roy Gillett today for a quick overview interview, really about the profession of astrology.
Mhm.
So, this is in the backdrop of our OPA conference, I-Astrologer, which begins next April to June, online and in person in Tucson. And Roy is one of the main speakers who is involved in both online presentations, a mentorship program, and also part of a panel in Tucson to evaluate the most promising astrologers. So this is a very exciting program, but I want to use this opportunity to really talk about the profession of astrology. Roy is the president of the Astrology Associations in Great Britain, and I'm sharing here his presentations. One of them will be astrology in the 21st century. So, as the leader of an organization, someone who's been involved not just as a practitioner, but part of the community, organizing conferences, knowing about what's going on in astrology, knowing about the struggles as well as the gifts and the value. Where are we at in the 21st century with astrology?
Yeah, okay. So, well, I think first of all, we should ask ourselves, why is it so special? Why do people, in spite of a lot of barriers put in their way, either in terms of opinion or in terms of practical reality, why do so many people care so deeply about astrology and see it very important in the 21st century? And I think there's something about the intrinsic nature of astrology. We live in a world where success is measured in fairly extrinsic ways, outside ways, and how you get that success is not often considered as important as whether you get it or not, or how you make money is not as important as having lots of money. And astrology is not like that. Astrology is about doing the right thing, about getting to what's the deeper reason behind things, partly by understanding cycles which are lying behind what goes on in life, how circumstances change from one time to another, and particularly how our own nature, in our own individual lives or in our individual feelings, things change. We don't feel the same every day, and there's reasons for that which are much more fundamental than the kind of surface reasons that are given to you by conventional knowledge. So people who understand astrology, people who consult reasonable, intelligent, knowledgeable, experienced astrologers, have a big advantage in understanding and making better decisions in their lives, either as individuals, in their personal relationships, in their business decisions, in their decisions about family, when they shall have a family, and their health and things like that. Not so much the diagnostic side of health, but more the kind of looking after yourself properly in a general way. People who think like that tend to use astrology wisely. And it's very important, therefore, that we use astrology to guide our lives and make decisions, particularly in the world at the moment.
Yeah. Speaking about that, we know many astrologers spoke about the year 2020 ahead of the drama. We wrote articles about the intensity, about this cluster of very dramatic cycles. And we all anticipated, many anticipated 2020 to be a turning point, to affect, the economy very deeply. Some, like Barbo, also spoke about a pandemic. And I wonder, if the world was really listening, if leaders were really listening,
Mm.
could we have averted some of the damage? Could astrology be, in a way, useful on a larger scale?
It's interesting. I mean, we get to a certain level where to claim that if we use astrology wisely, there wouldn't have been a COVID crisis is to be a bit facile, I think. But you could consider that the situation the world got itself into in the 20 years leading up to that crisis, it was asking for something like that to happen, or some sort of disaster in terms of the ecology and the economy of the planet. I mean, in fact, my recent book, Working with the Planets, which I say is about better understanding, clearer understanding, better decisions, is the title of the book. Working with the Planets is a summary of what I was writing for 20 years between 2002 and 2021, building up to what you've just spoken about, but also the events that happened during that time. And the advice, the astrological advice, if listened to, would certainly have avoided the Iraq War, would have certainly avoided the catastrophe of Afghanistan, would certainly have avoided probably Brexit and the election of Donald Trump. So there's a few things that some people might think differently politically, but they certainly are things that astrological understanding could have given the insight to change the course of history. And so, yes, it is important that astrologers are looking at the world and advising the world and are listened to in doing so. But not only that, also in our personal lives. This is when people come to see an astrologer, a professional astrologer, and get an insight into what is going on, either in their relationships, how things are changing, with their situation with their children, the career decisions they're having to make. Having that kind of objective insight into the cycles really gives you greater freedom to make choices. It's the opposite of what people say. You don't go to see an astrologer to see if you're going to meet a tall, dark, handsome stranger or a beautiful woman or something like that. You go to see an astrologer to see how you could best work out a good relationship so that your relationships you can have are much more successful. And it's the vitalness of that, I think, that makes professional astrology very important.
Now, this brings me to another question. As a leader in our community, as someone who's been in the field for decades and has seen the evolution of our field, today we're in a place where there is thanks to the internet, thanks to, different circumstances, astrology gains much greater visibility. We hear about it in major publications, even New York Times covers positive aspects of astrology. And it's not only, vilified. We start to see a change of attitude, even though we're going to talk about the critiques later. But I wonder, people are on the one hand, listening more to astrologers, but there's also a danger of diluting the content to make it, so accessible and watered down to a point where it can turn against us. It can become, overly pop.
This is the importance of what you're organizing, this OPA, I-Astrologer series of advice, lectures, grants, everything, the whole program, is that they're talking about the Wild West. Today they're talking about the Wild West of the internet and how it can be controlled and contained over here in England. Today it's the headline news. And it's the same is true to a certain extent of astrology. There are professional astrology organizations. The organization for professional astrology is your organization, is the organization that's organizing these courses. There in England, we have an association for professional astrologers. But these, irrespective of these, you don't have to be a professional person to give astrological advice, or seem to give astrological advice. And over the years, and I've been doing astrology full time since 1976, an incredible program of education and professional standards and ethics has developed and been established. And it's there now to control this, well, not control it so much as to inform this incredible expansion of astrological interest, to educate it, to give it standards, to make it responsible, to point out what is good astrology and what isn't good astrology. This is the real big professional challenge of the 21st century. If astrology is going to be accepted, it's got to stand up to scrutiny. And the scrutiny that's best is not the scrutiny from people who don't understand it, who just want to put it down because it seems to threaten them, but of the very astrologers themselves who've taken it seriously and developed standards of behavior and can say whether a person's astrological understanding, not its technique, but the actual quality of judgment is within the ethical standards that we expect as professional astrologers. So this is very vital, and this is where this course, this whole series of things that being organized in I-Astrologer is such a valuable contribution to this process.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, you know it, and we know it at OPA. It's an ongoing effort to really sustain and improve standards, ethical standards, and standards of practice. We have consulting skills. Learning astrology is not enough. You also need to learn how to communicate it, how to unpack it. And yeah, I hear you, and I'm of course on board with that. And so, let's look at the other side of this, where there are critiques and we see the repeated arguments, whether it's the 13th sign or, I'm going to bring up a recent article, reasons, from Psychology Today, which is not really an amazing reference to begin with, but occasionally, we see these articles surfacing about how the signs don't correspond to the constellations, and how we can't box people into 12 signs. So astrologers know that, our chart is not just a sun sign, categorization. But many astrologers are not really equipped to understand the precession of the equinoxes and other, 13 sign argument. And so we, at this conference, we're actually going to have a whole panel, including you, to talk about arguments against astrology. So can you give us...
well, first of all, I'd like to say that most of the arguments that come up in the media about astrology are pathetic and repetitive. And I mean that, I normally don't talk like this when you're having a general conversation, but the bottom line is that everything that's nearly every critique of astrology you'll see coming out in the media with big headlines has been said over and over again. I've been doing this, as I say, full time since 1976. I think there must have been about 6, 7, maybe 10 sudden exposés of astrology, particularly the 13 signs. There's 13 signs, therefore it doesn't work. There's precession of the equinoxes, that's shifted, therefore it doesn't work. We've given the same interpretation to everyone and they all say it's like them. Now, all of these pieces of research, all these things are either facts that by people who don't understand astrology. I mean, there's this amazing thing on British television, a very famous astronomer, somebody knows, heard of him, called Brian Cox, who said, hey, look, the planets are not all in the same sign, therefore astrology doesn't work. Well, we know the planets aren't all in the same sign. He thinks astrology is no more than sun signs, and yet he's a leading physicist. He's the spokesman for the BBC on astronomy. And he criticizes it on a basis of not understanding it. If I was to criticize physics in the same way that so-called scientists criticize astrology, I'll be laughed at as a fool, because I don't know what I'm talking about. So a lot of this research comes out in the media as if it's very authoritative, written by a lot of people, but in fact, it's not formal at all, and it's always repeated. It's nearly always the same criticism. A very funny one came out very recently, actually, where someone says that people who are into astrology are narcissistic and they are lower intelligence. Now, first of all, the research didn't say at what level of astrology the people were interested. I mean, are they just general members of the public who say, yes, I like astrology, which would be a different situation. If so, you know, what would happen if you're talking to me? Am I unintelligent? You know, I really don't think I'm unintelligent. We can show it along. Intelligence, how do you measure it? Are you talking about IQ? IQ is socially based. I studied that in the 1960s when I was training to be a teacher. And the whole idea that people interested in astrology are narcissistic, well, so does everybody who's interested in celebrity culture, everybody who goes to psychiatrists, a lot of people who go to see doctors quite regularly. In fact, just about everybody has an element of narcissism in their character. To suddenly say, because people are into astrology, they're narcissistic, is to miss the point completely. So, I mean, what we will be doing in this panel is just about knocking down every one of these criticisms. In fact, in my book, Astrology and Compassion, there's a whole chapter that deals with each of these things very clearly. And I'm sure my colleagues will have other arguments, so that if you want to be a serious astrologer, if you want to practice, you want to defend yourself, you will have all the ammunition to answer these kind of unnecessary criticisms.
Yeah, and it's not, it goes even beyond the ammunition. It's also about ourselves using the critiques to better understand what we're doing. Some astrologers don't really understand the 13th sign controversy. They hear it, they know, you know, there are 12 signs and not 13, but they don't know the astronomy of it. You know, this is another thing that OPA really focuses on.
Yeah.
Because astrologers often lack astronomy background. And it creates some kind of discrepancies that the critics use. So I think the panel is also about informing astrologers about what is really going on.
Yeah, it is. Although new astrologers might need some of this information. From my point of view, my colleagues, and those who've been around a long time, get so tired of hearing the same old thing again. Answering it over and over again. The only good thing about, and that it tends to come out in the media just as astrology is getting its head above water and becoming more and more accepted. I've seen this happen on a number of occasions. It's getting around, people are beginning to talk astrology, consider astrology, don't believe in astrology, but use astrology, because you shouldn't believe in astrology, you should use it.
Yeah.
And suddenly this thing comes out, oh, someone's proved that this, that, or the other about astrology. And in fact, it's a bit of research that was done 30 years ago and has been debunked. In fact, one of the things that is very exciting about the OPA series of lectures is the work we're going to do on research. There's going to be a grant for research. And some of the people who are adjudicating those research papers have fully answered just about every criticism of astrology, not in general terms, but in the terms of conventional statistics or conventional research analysis that will be peer reviewed and accepted in any area of academic activity. So astrologers have come up to the plate. And yes, we're going to tell people about this in the OPA course.
Yeah, thank you. I understand, and I'm glad we're having this. So, well,
there you are. There's Robert Curry, who edits our correlation magazine that the association has been publishing. The Astrological Association in Britain has been publishing for about 30 years or more, and you know, it's a very high-class academic magazine. Comes out.
And I wanted to show your book here, Working with the Planets, your new book, which is part of our raffle offering. So if you buy a raffle ticket, the money goes to scholarships, and you can get a software, get these books, including signed copy of Working with the Planets, the latest release by Roy Gillett.
This shows that using astrology alongside the events of the last 20 years could have led to much better outcomes. Well, you can judge for yourself whether you agree with that claim when you read the article I wrote at the time of the event or before the event, and you see what happened and you can look back. Yeah, so that is one of the books. I'll send it to you anywhere in the world at my expense if you win it in the raffle. Okay.
Thank you. Always very generous. And as far as your generosity, you know, I can really say from personal experience, Roy has been so dedicated and to support our profession, and so open for cooperations between organizations that it's really heartwarming to be able to work together and not be territorial about what we do, what they do, but cross-pollinate and support valuable efforts on every side. And so having him also, he's going to be one of our mentors in the program. And the mentorship consists of basically more personalized guidance. It's a group of just 7 people. And each one will basically speak about where they are at in their professional development and receive guidance from the mentors, including Roy. And so can you tell us about your approach and what you're going to do with it?
In these sessions, what I like to do first of all is have a little email interaction, so that well, first of all, go to that part of the website, the mentor, just look for mentor, look through the list and look through my experience that I summarize there. Because that will give you an idea of what it might trigger off things. Oh, I need it. He knows about that. Oh, I can talk about that, and so on and so forth. And then I will interact with you, once you've enrolled. I'll interact with you by email in advance to get an idea of what you're looking for. And then out of that, we'll work out a program that will be complementary and beneficial to all the people in the group, starting off with a general getting to know each other in the first session, and then gradually moving on to specific areas of study. Now, it may be that everybody wants to study mundane astrology, but we could do some time on that, but it may not be. It could be that you want to develop your consultation practice. You want to work out what is involved in becoming a professional astrologer, what is the same and different between being a professional astrologer and being a professional anything else. Is there something distinctive? Are there various ways of doing it? What are the practical advice? Very practical stuff. You know, how much do you charge? How do you do it? As well as the more esoteric side of the job. So it depends what people come to want, but I will know in advance what it is and make sure you get it. And the idea is to have a meeting to deal with specific areas that the group wants, and then to leave you with a certain amount of work to go away to check out good advice that you received, not only from me, but from colleagues as well, because everybody will have something to offer everybody else, and then come back and see how it went and carry on with the next stage and so on. So with 5 sessions like that, 6 if you come to Tucson, 2 hours each session at least. I might go on a bit if it's necessary. And you can come from pretty well anywhere in the world. The last group I did like this, we had someone in Japan, someone in Australia, someone in several people in America. I don't know if there was anybody in Europe, but I was, and I managed to organize my time accordingly.
You can't really have the 3 time zones because somebody's going to be in the middle of the night.
Well, that's how I had to do it.
It's either the Far East, Europe, and you need 2 time zones can work together.
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
we did more than that last time, Maurice. But yes, maybe it will be wiser. We'll see what the applications come in at. But the bottom line is for me, you know, I can work at odd hours if necessary to fit in the group. It's just to make sure that it's convenient to the group to work together, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
thank you
But yeah,
so
that's what
much.
we're doing.
And I'm ending with a quote from Giulio, who said that he was one of the participants in the 2018 event. So it happened 4 years ago, the last time. So if you want to come to this event and you think, oh, maybe I should do it next year, there's no next year. It doesn't happen every year. It's a huge production. So make it work for this year. And it, you know, I-Astrologer changed my life and launched my astrology career. And today, Giulio is a leader and successful practitioner. And he, through I-Astrologer, got to speak at different astrology conferences. So check it out, opaastrologyevents.org. And you have an installment option if you need to make payment plan, you know, several payments. You have the options to do 3 payments. We hope to see you there. We hope you see the value and the effort and the necessity of this program. Thank you so much, Roy.
Thank you.
And we'll be...
Keep on doing astrology. It's incredibly beneficial.